Michael, CEO of Novi. Very pleased to have you on the Geospatial Index.
Very nice to be here, Will. Thank you for having me.
Right, let's launch straight in. What's the elevator pitch for Novi?
I was afraid you'd ask me that, but no, it's quite. I'm just teasing, Will. It's quite simple. Novi is a US-based space infrastructure company pioneering real-time on-orbit computing for both national security and commercial markets. We have a strong foundation in the Department of Defense, and Novi has flight-proven systems supporting active missions for the US Air Force and the Missile Defense Agency currently. And this really positions us directly in line with emerging national security initiatives like Golden Dome. Last year, building on this defense-grade capability, we determined to commercialize our platform through VistaSat, and this is an open-access multi-sensor edge compute satellite constellation. And it really was the culmination of the work that we've done for many years in the defense sector. VistaSat empowers developers and enterprises to host algorithms in orbit and access actionable insights. It's sort of it answers the so what of Earth observation data. And certainly as global investment in terrestrial AI infrastructure accelerates, as you well know well, Novi extends this infrastructure to space, bringing inference and autonomy to the edge of Earth's orbit.
Okay, so I have a bad habit as the host of this podcast of linking every guest to other or multiple other episodes. So I can actually go back to something like the third episode a couple of years ago with Will Cadell, who's the CEO of Spark Geo. And his contention there in that episode is that the reason why most of the Earth observation SPACs of 2022 also crashed has been that there's not enough of what you're talking about, analytics. There's the assumption that everyone's going to want to buy pixels. So it sounds like finally we've got a guest here in you and this company, Novi, that's responding, I guess, to this call to action that the likes of Will Cadell have been making. I also have to say that I was honestly pretty intimidated hearing about all this edge AI computing in space and all this stuff, but at the same time, it's fascinating. So yeah, thanks for bringing these modern concepts onto the show, Michael.
Certainly, my pleasure.
So then let's dig in a bit further. So could you tell us more about the niche that you're dominating?
Well, I wouldn't consider it a niche. I would consider it really Space 2.0, the next evolutionary stage in Earth observation. And I'll allegorically describe it. And let me reach here for my mobile phone.
Sure.
If this device was $30,000, not a lot of us would have it. And I think that's the challenge with Earth observation today. It's a very useful tool, but it's still very much in the domain of large enterprises and governments. And so you have to make this thing, bring it down to under $1,000, put in easy play programs, make accessing app stores very easy and user-friendly. And that's really what needs to happen in space. And that's what Novi is doing. By taking the compute layer from Earth into orbit and dramatically reducing the amount of data that's transmitted to Earth, you bring costs down by an order of magnitude, and you really democratize the use of Earth observation data. So that is really what we're doing. We're setting up an open access platform, bringing costs and pricing down, removing impediments from a data ownership standpoint, and then you really galvanize the user base. It's interesting, Will. I've seen the critique. Why aren't users just lining up to use Earth observation data? Well, it's kind of simple. It's expensive, and there isn't this unified open access platform that really exists today. It's like wondering why there wasn't a proliferation of cloud software before the cloud was made available, or the proliferation of mobile phone apps before the mobile phone was available. You need to set up this platform to then really expand the user base and expand the addressable market and efficiency of the solution.
This concept of bringing the terrestrial compute to space or at the location of the sensor somehow reminds me of a similar concept that a bit of a personality in geospatial, especially on LinkedIn, Matt Forrest talks about. He's a developer advocate or outreach engineer at Whereabouts, and he talks about bringing the compute to the storage. Yeah, so that, yeah, interesting to hear these concepts across a couple of subdomains in our overall geospatial industry. Okay, so the next question is how you work backward from customer needs. I think you've already started to talk about it, you know, for this nice example of nobody wanting to buy a $30,000 mobile phone. Were there some systematic customer need capture sessions, workshops, other ways that you detected the customer need that you're responding to here?
Yes, and I think the customer need was informed both intrinsically and extrinsically. So we have spent quite a lot of time interacting with a broad user base, from enterprises, third-party purveyors of Earth observation data, individual developers and users, and really trying to get a sense as to what the broader community is looking for and what would serve their purposes. And then, of course, we've integrated this intrinsic feedback with what we understand extrinsically from industries like the data storage industry, semiconductor industry, and other industries that have have come before us in this regard, at least from an industry and business standpoint. And I think it comes down to really three things. It comes down to economics, ease of use, and data ownership. And those are sort of the three pillars that need to be addressed. It needs to be cheap enough, it needs to be very easy to use, and there cannot be all these restrictions around data ownership and resale of data or insights, because that just simply hinders commerce. So you've got to liberate commerce, make it easy, make it cheap, and then that's really pretty agnostic to the users, whether it's enterprises, medium, small, large, whether it's individual developers. It becomes sort of an agnostic democratization of the tool.
So again, I can link what you're saying to something that Gabe Domoncello, the Chief Strategy Officer, I think at Umbra, said about licensing and their more permissive approach to people using their SAR data. Yeah, so it seems like his approach to going in the opposite direction of the usual straitjacket around licensing is percolating through with Novi as well.
Yes, I mean, the way we look at it, Novi is not in the business of selling data. We're in the business of offering up an open access platform that has actually, and this is a key component that I didn't mention, a very broad range of sensors. There's many different ways to look at the world: RGB, hyperspectral, infrared, thermal infrared, SAR. And one of the problems today is you have a whole bunch of constellations with different sensors. And if you want data richness and you want to combine a bunch of different sensors, they're non-coincidental. So it results in pretty cumbersome and laborious data fusion on Earth. If you have a platform that supports a broad sensor array that is coincidental, you make that fusion extremely easy and efficient in maximizing the data richness of what you're observing. So that is a key element of it. But you're right, we don't look at selling the data. We allow people to upload their algorithms and get their insights. And it's very much like a timeshare. There's a platform access fee, there's a maintenance fee, and beyond that, the user can have at it for their fractional portion of the constellation.
That relates to a question further on. Yeah, about okay, I won't go further. We'll cover that there. Okay, I have to ask, so how many different sensors are you planning to have once the full-blown system is set up per satellite? Because it sounds like you'll have something that's festooned with all manner of cameras and other types of. It sounds pretty amazing, to be honest.
It won't be a Franken satellite. We're sort of we've thought deeply about that as well, and there's two elements to that. So it'll be a hybridized constellation. So the initial satellites, as we proliferate, we plan to launch our first two commercial satellites. Now we've got military assets in space, but our first two commercial satellites will go up in the next 9 to 12 months. We're manifested on SpaceX Transporter 16 and 17, and then it'll proliferate to about 40 satellites within 36 months. As the initial satellites will have a combination of RGB, hyperspectral, and near IR, and possibly RF. Then as we go into subsequent elements of the constellation, we'll start to blend in high-res RGB, go into more into shortwave IR, thermal IR. So the way to consider the satellite, it's a hybridized constellation. The sensor suite evolves as the constellation grows, informed by what the customer needs. Our job within the platform is not to tell the customer what they need, but to be nimble and flexible to hybridize the constellation depending on where the low-hanging fruit are from a customer acquisition standpoint and where the market is going. So yes, we will have a very broad sensor suite, but not every satellite will be festooned with every sensor.
Okay.
It'll take this hybridized approach. So there'll be some degree of fusion required. But since we manage the platform and manage the standard, it'll be a lot easier for us to use and leverage that data. So that's the sensor strategy. And I think as with most things we're doing in this platform, we are going to make it very nimble to the users. At the end, they will be a part of informing and directing how this organism develops and grows.
Yeah, I have to say I think I'm not the only one in thinking it's just so fascinating to hear, this commentary about, the strategizing, the decision making, about what goes into these satellites, and just mentioning these SpaceX transporter launches and that you're planning to be on one. I mean, we've also had Esper Space on, and we've had Wyvern. Esper's from Australia. We've had Wyvern from Canada. So yeah, you're joining a happy, merry band of SpaceX transporter users on the show, at least.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just covering off a couple more topics to do with how the business is run before we step into some examples of what you actually offer. So what's the skin in the game of the likes of yourself as a CEO, managers, and even staff in terms of how you incentivize people to be committed to the business?
So Novi's an interesting company, and I'll set the stage for the answer there, Will. So a lot of companies in sort of what I call Space 1.0, and kudos to them, right? A lot of pioneers, early movers, have really set the stage for for this transition and evolution of the space industry. But they took in lots of money trying to play in commercial space with a cost structure that didn't quite support it, couldn't close the business model, and then sort of went retreating into defense and national security space where most of the money resides. Novi was very fortunate that we started there. We started in national security, built a robust business that supported itself from revenues generated from the business. So until recently, the company has a very clean cap table. It was 100% employee and founder owned. So clean cap table. All employees are incentivized because they're owners. So it is not a company they work for. It is their company. So that's really how we incentivize people. We're very selective on who joins the team. Members who join the team are owners on a very clean cap table, which has lucrative upside. And we proceed in a careful and judicious manner when we manage the cap structure and the funding of this business. And we have the leisure to do so because we are operating from the defense safe harbor, which is a key element of sort of our lean and highly capitally efficient strategy.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds enlightened. It's always interesting to hear what each business has to say on the show in response to this incentives issue. So yeah. Okay. Finally,
I think it's also noteworthy that from a skin in the game standpoint, the founders themselves have invested in the company. So there's a lot apart from everybody being owner operators in this business. Founders have definitely put skin in the game into the business. So it's a high conviction business.
Okay. Yeah, that's the question really comes from my small amount of training in how to make investment decisions, and I think the answer you're giving will provide confidence for maybe I guess the next firm might be participating in I guess you're to seed rounds by now, are you?
Yes,
Or
we're just concluding a seed round that was to launch our first two commercial satellites, as I mentioned, and we'll be doing a slightly larger round in the back nine of this year to then proliferate up to our 40 satellite constellation.
right, incredible. Yeah, so I guess definitely that answer that you gave, I think would be welcome for them. Okay, so the last one is a general sort of laying the groundwork for understanding what the business is. The last question is growth. How has it been?
The company we are at an inflection point. So the company itself has been generating revenue, as I mentioned, and supporting itself. It's been supporting itself organically through the defense business. But we are seeing a convergence of two very powerful forces affecting both defense space and civilian or commercial space. In defense space right now, there has been a lot of money directed towards the Space Defense Agency, initiatives like Golden Dome. So Novi's in the public domain, our defense customers are the Air Force, the Missile Defense Agency. So we're very, very well positioned within this influx of investment into the space domain in the defense sector. So that business is expected to post pretty strong growth year in and year out. Similarly, in commercial space, we are now seeing a lot of focus into AI infrastructure, right? There was the whole announcement with SoftBank and Sam Altman, the investment in the AI infrastructure fund. Well, while a lot of that is around data centers and AI infrastructure on Earth, for Earth observation and space, that infrastructure naturally has to propagate to the space edge. And so we believe that that's going to also result in acute and targeted investment into commercial space where it applies more to AI infrastructure, both on ground and in space. So we believe that is going to fuel strong commercial growth, but it has to be built on the back of economics. It doesn't matter how much money is there if you don't have a solution that is viable for the user base. So I think with the economics we present and this increased investment and focus on inference and AI infrastructure and compute in space, we will post very strong growth in that realm as well.
I mean, I've got a couple of remarks. I think you've just made several people, including several CEOs, pretty jealous about the business that you've got going there. Another thing is, yes, there has been a lot of talk of not only a huge amount of investment in terrestrial data centers, but also in nuclear power to power them all. But yes, I think I also read something about data centers in space, for example, because it's nice and cold up there. So, I mean, has there been any talk or proposals at Novi about somehow using a space-based data center to assist with any of this edge processing?
We have certainly we have contemplated this as we consider our place in the space, but we're not a data center play. You're right. There are companies who are contemplating putting data centers in space. It's a ready and available source of energy, right? If you have enough solar panels, you're generating energy. Heat dissipation is actually a problem in space because you don't have a lot of molecules, so dissipation through convection is very difficult. So you have to engineer a lot of heat sink technologies, and it's non-trivial. So for a data center in space, consumes energy but generates heat, and the dissipation of that heat is actually non-trivial. But a lot of companies are working on that, data centers in space. That is not our swim lane, because really what we're not doing is generating and hoarding large amounts of data, right? We're gathering the data, analyzing it, discarding 99%, and just sending the percent that's useful. So there really, I think, there is a place for both technologies. For Earth observation insights, that's where we play. Gather data, provide insights, provide intelligence, and promote dynamic change management and change management on Earth. Data centers, it's just taking data centers from Earth to space to benefit from some of the advantages of being in space. So yeah, those are different swim lanes.
Okay, all right. I very much appreciate your sporting and gentle corrections there, Michael. I think there might be a few more in the next question I've got. So the small amount of research that I did preparing for this said that there are something like 9 Earth observation edge computing competitors of yours. So something like 10 that are 10 players here. I'd appreciate some corrections and commentary around that number if you've got any. Some examples are a partnership between IBM and Redwire, another competitor is Spire Global, and another one is SatRev. What is an example customer or industry that prefers Novi's edge computing solution over both these competitors and also over traditional Earth observation data handling? So dumping the whole lot, all of the sense data down on a ground station on Earth, and why?
So there's several things to unwrap in that question. And maybe I'll answer it like this. Yes, there are several players, as you outlined, who are experimenting with edge computing in space. But from our perspective, edge compute is not a component or technology solution. It is an overarching platform solutions. So yeah, companies are making computers. They're using them for their own onboard processing solutions or limited hosting. But no one is building a singular multi-sensor open access smart constellation that will offer users a platform as a service experience that delivers data and insight ownership, at a fraction of a cost, as we have talked about. So we don't even really see these companies as competitors, right? I mean, putting a computer on a few satellites and even hosting your own software or some limited customer software in a sort of a closed access system, that is not what we're doing. It's what differentiates us is our business model and what we're able to achieve economically. So we believe that ultimately customers will select us based on the economic value proposition and certainly the quality of the platform itself. So our business model is quite different from what most operators offer today. And I think one of the key issues that we have come across is this whole concept of open access. And I think a lot of the incumbents are thinking about this as well, right? Because today the model is closed access, you get data, but you don't really own it, and there are restrictions, and it's sort of a hindrance to commerce and these types of things. So beyond just the computer and the satellite, we think one of the most enabling elements of what we're doing is opening access to the platform. And we believe that that doesn't really pigeonhole us with any particular constituency of customers. It's appealing to all customers. And now, having said that, we are not looking to, we believe edge compute in space done in this sort of open platform, open access platform model is going to be massive. And there's going to be room for Novi and a whole bunch of other companies propagating different models that are going to appeal to a very broad constituency of customers. We are looking at trying to address the largest subset of customers by our business model offering. Now, having said that, our onboard compute is extremely optimized. We believe that we have found the sweet spot of high performance, low cost, radiation tolerance, and proven space heritage. And so this is, our processes are already flying in space, and we believe that we've found the sweet spot of the compute that supports our platform aspirations. And we are quite open to actually sharing this technology with others. As you can see from our open access model, we don't believe the solution to new spaces is silos and barriers. We're quite willing and are sharing our onboard computers with other players in the space, both defense and civilian, because we believe this is what's going to be required to really push compute to the space edge. All boats rise together. I don't know if that really answered the full extent of your question, Will, but I hope that stream of consciousness kind of made some sense.
So it was really helpful. So what I'm feeling is that, in a sense, and maybe this is a bit provocative, in a sense, Earth observation is a distraction here. Really what you're about is a space-based computing infrastructure or platform. It's like a terminal that you can deploy computer programs to, pardon the basic language here. And it just so happens that connected to or accessible from each of these onboard computers is an array of sensors. So it's as though you are a compute infrastructure or compute platform first.
That is exactly right. Now, I'll use an example. I mean, if you look at, again, this device, which is congenitally attached to me, by the way, but
I know the feeling. I can do the same. I'm surprised I've managed to keep it out of my hand this long.
Well, this is really just a sense of sense. This is just a suite of sensors on a platform that allows people to develop apps and sell apps, and you open it up to a large developer and user base. So it's a terrestrial sensor that you democratize. We're really just sort of putting this in space. We're putting this in space. You look at the Earth in a myriad of ways. You open up the platform. Enterprises and developers can upload software for their own use. They can sell it on a marketplace. But that's really what we're doing. We're setting up this Earth observation platform that a very broad range of people can exploit for their own benefit, whether it's enterprises who load software to achieve their means, or whether it's developers who upload apps and then sell it on a marketplace.
I think you used this analogy earlier on. You are somehow the app store for Earth observation, and it's based around the key fact that the optimal location for that app store is on as close to the sensors as possible. Yeah. Am I getting anywhere here?
Yes, and I think there are other folks who also have developed apps around Earth observation data, but then we come back to the same issue, which is cost, right? If you download a bunch of data and then develop apps based on expensive data, the apps by default have to be expensive, which limits their adoption and use. So what we are trying to do is just by moving compute to space and moving the applications and the insight generation in space versus the ground, you break the back of the cost problem, and then you sort of drive greater ubiquity of app development and use. I think the example we use, the mental model we use, is needle in a haystack, right? Today, there's lots of haystacks that have valuable needles that people desire. But these haystacks have to be sent down a narrow band pipe from satellites to Earth at great expense, and then the needles have to be extracted in a time-consuming manner. If you can just get the needles in space and send them down, you've cut down cost, you've cut down time. It's fast, it's cheap, and that will drive innovation and it will drive use.
I'm going to force all guests in future to use mental models. They really help me. Okay. All right. I think we've done that one. Let's move on to the next item. So we can compare your marketplace to services offered by other podcast guests like Map Impact, which do nature metrics in the UK, or Spot It, which I characterized as writing to utility databases from space, and then Ursa, which does commodity stockpile intelligence. So how will Novi impact or augment competitors like this?
Actually, these companies are not our competitors. They're ideal users of our platform.
Yeah.
So, today, many analytics providers are constrained by traditional EO delivery models. They're literally squeezed. They've got high cost of data, which squeezes their gross margins because their users don't have a huge share of wallet to spend on the insights, the analytics, or the process data. So really what we do is we offer them liberation, right? If they can just pay for the data they need, they can reclaim margin while at the same time dropping pricing to their users and expand their user base. So the companies you mentioned and others are ideal users of our platform. They basically get fractional lease of a constellation without having to put it up themselves, and then economically benefit from the efficiencies and the function of the platform.
All right. Well, this is another function that I play via this podcast, is to send off emails to people. So I'll happily connect you all by email to those three CEOs.
Thank you. That would be much appreciated. I'd be delighted to talk to them.
Okay. I'll have to start charging for this at some point. Okay. So next up is, what are the implications of owning a fractional share in Novi's VistaSat? And how does one come by a fractional ownership of said constellation?
So fractional. So maybe again a mental model. Fractional ownership is similar to the NextJet's model, right? If companies and individuals who can't afford to own and operate their own executive jet can do so through fractional ownership or lease. That's really, really what we're doing. Owning a fractional share in Novi's VistaSat means you're not just buying data, buying pixels, as you stated. You're buying dedicated orbital compute infrastructure. Practically speaking, it gives our customers or partners reserved access to onboard processing power, tasking priority for specific regions, use cases, or times, the ability to upload, test, and iterate their own algorithms directly in orbit, and then certainly data ownership and control of the outputs, unlike the closed Earth observation platform. So customers are not subscribing to data feed. They're investing in an edge cloud node in orbit. So as I mentioned again, another model is you can think of it as it's almost like a timeshare, right? You have a fractional ownership in a broad array of properties that you get to use on a limited basis, and that's really what we're doing. And it's extremely valuable. You mentioned some of the analytic companies. Some of the analytical companies and a lot of these firms, even enterprises, don't have the money to build, launch, and operate their own constellations. What we offer them is a fractional lease in a constellation that they can then exploit as they see fit for their benefit. So that's kind of how the model works, and it's a pretty standard lease model, right? There's a platform. Let's say a customer signs up for a period of time. There's a platform access fee. There's a recurring maintenance fee. And then, of course, the data transmission is at cost. So the more insights they generate versus raw data, the less they pay for transition. But they even have control on that. There may be companies who want to get the raw data down, or some augmented raw data. Well, they can certainly do that with this platform as well. So those are really the implications of owning a fractional share in Novi's VistaSat platform.
Yeah. Okay. There's so much insight here, Michael. It's just privileged to have the chance just to listen to you. So then, Michael, I've got another question for you that's just come up for me, and I'm going to ask it for the purpose of extracting every last bit of knowledge I can whilst I've got you. So maybe this is pushing the limit a bit of what the technology allows, but what I've got in my mind is, if you are proposing to evolve your constellation and the number of sensors or the types of sensors on satellites over time, is the state of the industry such that a effectively maintenance satellite can catch up with a satellite in your constellation and somehow, because of modular design, add a new sensor to it? Is that at all possible now? Is anybody in the industry thinking about that being possible in future, that, for all these 12,000 or whatever satellites there'll be, I don't know, 1,000 extra maintenance satellites running around maintaining and modifying the ones in orbit?
So there's two answers to that question. So our model is structured differently to address that, and I will address that. But yeah, I do believe that in the future, space is going to become a very vibrant ecosystem for a myriad of technologies. In some of our applications, in more in the defense sector, we're looking at space autonomy, right? Satellites that have now intelligent satellites that can look around them, have domain awareness, and can even respond to external factors autonomously. So yes, and I do believe there are people talking about satellites that will either go and be additional, provide thrusts to other satellites, or who knows, do what level of maintenance.
Is there like refueling as well?
Yeah, I've heard of that too. So I think there are companies that are focusing on that. We have taken a more pragmatic approach. Typically, our satellites, while they're while they're packed with a ton of power and sensor suite, their lifetime is about 4 to 5 years, right? So they're decommissioned after 5 years. So we don't really have to worry about servicing them or attaching new sensors. We have built into our model this constant technology refresh. So every 4 to 5 years, we're replacing satellites that are decommissioned while we're proliferating. So we're constantly ahead of the curve in integrating new sensors, advanced technologies, the next latest and greatest processing chips, and everything we learn as the platform develops continually gets upgraded in the system, because it's got about a 48 to 60-month refresh cycle.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, it's going to be difficult for me to restrain myself, but because I'll ask one more question, and then I'll try and get back to the original agenda. But I have to ask this one. So, I mean, machine learning, deep learning, AI, all of these forms of compute are known for consuming a hell of a lot of power. And yet you're proposing to do it on a satellite in orbit. So does it all come from solar power? What's the power source?
Yes, it's solar panels. So we, of course, we have solar panels, and we've got batteries that the solar panels charge. But yeah, we have to have sufficiently large solar arrays that meet the power demands of this processing. And there is a distinction there, which is when we consider inference models and deep learning algorithms, they're trained on Earth, and then the model is uploaded. So you're not just spending the voluminous amounts of power training these models in orbit. That's not the model. That would require a lot more power than really the economics of our solution would support. So the models will, and there's also issues of transmission. So models will be trained on Earth because you can get data down, you can use archived data, train the models, upload them, refine them in space, and then they're up and running. And as you want to upgrade them or change them, you just burp that up onto the platform.
It's so fascinating, yeah, to know that there's a whole part of our industry that's in these intense discussions about how to put these LLMs and other approaches to AI in space. It's fascinating. I did say that will be the last aside, but I've got one more. What is the size of these solar panels to sustain the amount of power that's needed?
I'll paint you a picture. Well, so consider the satellites, anywhere from 6 to 16 U. So you can consider, anywhere from 2 to sort of 4 shoeboxes is the size of the satellites.
Yep.
And then you could maybe consider the solar arrays are anywhere from 2 to 4 feet long. So. Okay. So the actual product it's pretty small. It's very compact, and it's a real. I think that's another point, right? When we look at a platform like this and we look at what we're able to cram into a tight space, because size and weight is a function of how much it costs to launch, these things into space. But sensor technology has come such a long way, compute has come such a long way, that you can now dramatically put a lot of compute power, sensor technology, solar arrays into a relatively small package that really, really delivers a lot of value and a lot of output.
I'm learning so much. Yeah, it's really updating a lot of the stereotypes I have about how things are done in space. Yeah. Okay, so as I was saying in the lead up to this episode before we got going, I realized I've been remiss really in not consistently asking all guests for feedback about the Geospatial Index stock listing that I've been maintaining. We're at about 370 companies worldwide on 25 stock exchanges, even in Vietnam, even in Abu Dhabi, even in Norway. So the whole world is covered. And the sub-indices or verticals that seem to relate to you are the legacy, like remote sensing stocks. There's 12 of those, Boeing, Thales, Kongsberg, the likes of those. And then the more new space Earth observation companies, and there's 19 components for that sub-index. So I just wanted to briefly poll you, see if you've got any comments about the quality of my stock listing there.
Certainly, yes. No, it's first and foremost, it's a great project, Will. So I think I've browsed the Geospatial Index, and really really admire and respect the effort to bring more structure to the evolving sector, right? I mean, I think you just alluded to that. It's an extremely diverse sector, and installing a little bit of method to the madness is certainly much needed, and I applaud that. I think I'll leave the component by component analysis to others for now, but maybe this is a little bit of my cheeky response. You know, I think once Novi's commercial constellation is live, it's distinct enough that you may want to add a new category altogether for real-time orbital compute infrastructure. Just saying.
Yeah, awesome, definitely. And it seems like, you know, with those 10 or so players, you know, maybe I can shift some of those out of the new space or Earth observation index into new one. Yeah, and that you make a good point. That's definitely a part of what I'm trying to do. And another is to register the fact that new verticals, need to be recognized, and components assembled under those. Another one that maybe relates, and the issue here is that they all seem to be private companies, is this new geospatial foundation model trend. And I could put IBM in that, for example, because they created Prithvi in collaboration with NASA. All the big hyperscalers really, I mean, Google in the past couple of weeks released their own geospatial foundation model. So maybe I can already put some of the public companies in that new index or sub-index. And yes, I'll be waiting for you to go public, Michael. So we're all waiting with bated breath. Okay, so yeah, the last one is, if you were to hire an apprentice, what qualities would get them the job?
So I mean, without a doubt, I mean, talent is absolutely critical, right? And especially in new space, because I think what we're seeing in new space is that the pace of innovation is often runs traditional playbooks, and so I would look for someone who has a multidisciplinary toolkit, right, and can blend hard science with skills like user experience, software ecosystems, cost curves. So I think this is, as we look at new space and what we're trying to accomplish, whether it's in national security, multi-domain type operations to civilian or commercial space, really looking for a blend of these different disciplines and tradecraft is key in an individual. And certainly at Novi, you know, we're a very nimble and lean team, and all of us have to wear multiple hats. My gosh, I'll go into the kitchen and wash dishes. I'm a pretty good dishwasher. So I think certainly as I would look to a resource, an abiding sense of belief and mission in what we're building, and the desire to wear many hats would be critical elements to be a part of the team that I'm privileged to belong to.
Maybe this is a bit cheeky on my part, but now you've got me thinking about edge compute in dishwashers. Is this a sign of the times, Michael?
I guess so. You know, Will, I'm no spring chicken, and sometimes I feel like the world is leaving me behind, and I wonder what kind of world my 14-year-old is going to live in.
I've got the same questions regarding my 4-year-old. So yeah, looking forward to tracking things. Michael, I honestly almost can't believe that my humble effort running this podcast has gotten to the point where I have the distinct privilege of time with you. It's inspiring. And all I can say is that, yeah, all of the listeners, I think, will be very grateful they've somehow stumbled upon this show. And I hope I can, keep repeating it with more guests like you. So yeah, needless to say, if you've got anyone else to refer to the show, keep me in mind.
Well, the privilege was all mine, Will. I found your questions insightful. I found the forum extremely engaging and enjoyable. So I do want to thank you for the time that I've got to spend with you. It's certainly been a privilege.